yesterday you were kind of all for the, maybe UT versus Georgia, getting a little rematch in there. You like that matchup?
I love it. I love it. I'm sure the Tennessee fans here probably don't want that to happen. And by the way, I've watched Georgia Tech a couple times. I don't know where this game is being played. Is it at Georgia Tech? They better. Hey, man,
listen. They don't
better
sleep
not
on
sleep
Georgia Tech.
Yeah, that could throw a monkey wrench. So would that then change? And then they still just move down one, and then Tennessee moves up one. Then Tennessee plays Georgia at Tennessee in Knoxville.
It could happen.
That's what I really want.
What do you think, Jackson?
I'm sorry, Joseph was talking to me.
He don't want none of that smoke. He don't want none of that smoke.
Are you scared of Georgia?
Yeah, they ain't
Absolutely.
scared.
I do not want to play Georgia in the first round. In Athens, absolutely not.
I mean, if you're going to make the playoffs at this point, you should be saying as a fan, we'll take on anybody.
I want Notre Dame. I told you that yesterday.
Yeah, but you want them not for the matchup. You want them for the actual, nostalgia effect.
The historical rivalry being renewed is what I want. I want Notre Dame and Tennessee. Wherever it's played.
Let me say this. As much as I have panned Alabama's chances, if they get in, I'm going to say that they could beat anybody.
Right.
I mean, let's just roll with it. You got to roll with it. You got to believe. It's belief. Yeah. You got to have belief in your team. This battered BVS has really got you.
Yeah.
Buddy, I've been slapped around for 24 years. Mm-hmm. I believe in them, but it always hurts me.
Yeah, I think the fans, think differently than the actual players. I think the Tennessee actual players would actually want to play Georgia just to get back to the feet. They said, y'all got us for a half. In the second half, now we're going to show them we're better than you in our house. So I hope they do get them and they get to play them in Tennessee, because then that's a little bit to their advantage with all that fan noise and everything else, different atmosphere being at home. So, yeah, I'd love the revenge, a defeat. Yeah. And then if they do, they will then go on a run for the championship, because if they beat them, their offense then played up to par and the defense came with something a little bit different. That way, Carson Beck wasn't sitting back there baking a pancake back there like he was doing, putting up all those yards last time. So athletes as competitors, you want to play the team that beat you. Oh, absolutely you do. We don't want any other challenge. Let's start there to let everybody know we're the real deal.
So let me ask you this. So this is from Tyler Dial in the YouTube chat on Zone TV, the F&M Bank chat. SEC versus SEC, so that'd be Georgia versus Tennessee as it currently sits right now. And Big Ten versus Big Ten, which is Penn State versus Indiana, in the first round would suck. I'd rather see conference versus conference. So what do you think about that? To me, I'm kind of with you I kind of am looking at it from the player perspective too, is like, I think that they want to go in and play against these in-conference guys to you also get your feet wet, right? Mm-hmm. But go in and kind of have something to prove one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. And the guy's going to get up too. Also, I think the committee is trying to make it not where we get two conference teams for the semi and then the championship. Next year, you may have two SEC or two Big Ten teams in the dang on freaking national championship. Yep. You don't want that. Not the first year. No. So, yeah, you want them to eliminate each other along the way. So I'm with that.
What about you, Jackson? Any preference in, you want conference versus conference, or, in-conference games don't matter?
I would like a fun out-of-conference matchup from a Tennessee perspective.
Because you all may only have one shot, kind of like Alabama. So you may want to just, something different, I guess.
Yeah, something fun.
Something fun. So that's why you are full gung-ho on Tennessee and Notre Dame.
I'd take Indiana, too.
Indiana, just for the rivalry aspect between you and the show and Buck?
No, just, a guaranteed trip to the second round.
Oh, there you go.
This just hit me when he said Notre Dame, Indiana.
Yeah.
What state has two teams right now projected in the top 12? Is it? Besides Indiana.
Yeah.
Oh, a basketball state.
Everything's coming up Hoosier at the moment. Except for basketball, as we just saw.
That cannot be true.
No, Texas. SMU and Texas.
SMU and Texas. Okay, yeah. I knew it because SMU just got in. They said, yeah. Okay, which fits the billing. Texas is a big-time football state, just in general. When you're talking to head coaches, they do recruiting. Texas, Florida, California, now Tennessee's in the mix there after all the, the top area states. And then, so yeah, Indiana's getting better at football, but those recruits are coming from all over the place. But yeah.
Worse at basketball.
Yes. The Indiana
lost it.
almost lost by
Hey,
30?
they cut it down. So they were down 35 at one point, cut it down all the way to 28.
Okay, so listen to this. So, obviously the Iron Bowl's this weekend, right? Alabama versus Auburn, me versus Don Davenport. My alma mater is Memphis, and in basketball, Memphis versus Auburn on ESPN in the Maui Invitational. So there you go. I'm doubling up
You get to
this
play in
weekend.
2 teams.
Yeah. Well, I mean, went to school for one, grew up, rooting for one. Like I've been rooting for Alabama since '89, I believe. So
Well, I've been rooting for Notre Dame
Yeah.
since I was a kid. I wanted to go there.
Didn't know University of Memphis existed until 2002. So when I put in my application to
Oh,
get a
my.
scholarship for University of Memphis.
You didn't know they existed.
No, I didn't even know there was a University
Where
of
else did
Memphis.
you
I mean,
apply
I
to
knew
go to
Memphis existed, but I didn't know University of Memphis existed.
Where did you apply? We're on top of
Alabama.
the list. Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Oh.
It was a very short list because we moved my senior year of high school and all that
Oh.
kind of stuff. So, but we're going to move this conversation to the University of Tennessee and Vanderbilt matchup when we come back. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here, 104.5 The Zone.
Ying. Hey, this is Blaine Bishop, and I want to know if you have heard about peptides. And peptides are shaking up the fitness world. They are naturally occurring aminos in our bodies, so as we age, they start to decline. And at some point, you may need to be supplemented. This is why our workouts can stop being productive at the gym. And maybe you feel like you've hit a wall, or perhaps you feel tired all the time. You may be struggling to stay awake in the evenings when you get home from work. Well, if you had the thought that this is just a normal part of aging, it doesn't have to be that way. Peptides are proven to increase muscle and performance, burn fat, and help with recovery between workouts and more. And peptides can even help with motivation and mental clarity. These are safe, naturally occurring aminos, not pharmaceuticals, a natural and holistic way to get your body back to peak performance. Plus, Edge Peptide Therapy has the most comprehensive blood panel around. So when you go to Edge, you will know exactly what is going on inside of your body and what it needs to get back to peak performance. So feel better from the inside out. And all you have to do is go to edgepeptide.com. Yes, that's edgepeptide.com. Or you can just give them a call at 615-724-1878. That's 724-1878.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors. And we're going to go straight to the phone lines to bring in. And now listen, I know we're in Tennessee Titans country, and there may be a little booing involved from the car because we're bringing in former Ravens head coach, Super Bowl XXXV champion, head coach of the Baltimore Ravens, Brian Billick, in on the show. And Coach, I want to start off talking about Arizona State. You've obviously been involved with the Arizona State football team and the program, and just talk about this season that has been phenomenal. 3 ranked wins so far in the season as a whole.
Yeah, they've done a nice job. I left there when Herm left. I had gone out to consult for Herm Edwards when he was there. But Coach Dillingham's come in and done an excellent job. He's brought together a good group of athletes. They're playing with a lot of passion. They got better and better as the year went on and had 3 great wins here this last week. So they put themselves in a position to make a run at the Big 12 title and maybe even a playoff spot.
To add on to that, though, were you there? To add on to that, Coach, were you there with Jaden Daniels?
I was there for about 2 weeks. That
was my introduction. Okay. Well, you just got to see him.
That was my introduction to college football when I came back to consult. We were there about a week, and Jaden and his mother came in and said, "Hey, we need a couple million to stay." And we got, well, no, that's not the way we work it at Arizona State. So they left and went to LSU.
Got you, Coach.
Coach, it seems the NFL maybe has like a patience problem when it comes to the drafting, developing, and playing of a young quarterback. And I know development isn't linear, but in your experience, what do you think is the best approach to handle a young quarterback's development when they first get drafted by a team?
Well, if you're talking about a first-round pick, and I think it's a differential between that versus, say, a later pick, you'd like to old school, let them develop, give them some time, but that's not the way it works in the NFL. If you're going to spend that kind of money and you're taking a first-round pick and you're saying this is a guy, then, in my opinion, you put him in and play. And because that's the only way he learns. He really does. And then you need to find out. Bill Walsh felt like that it took somewhere in the 24th, 25th game, you would know if a player was the real deal or not. Now, it might happen before then, but if it hasn't happened by then it's probably not there. So you need to get those games in. You need to accelerate the growth process to find out if indeed you've got a guy. Some people disagree with that. But if you take a guy in the first round and the first thing you say, well, but he needs to wait and mature and learn a little bit, well, then you probably shouldn't have taken him in the first round.
That's a good point. In general, how much of the blame do you think falls on the shoulders of the coaching and scheme that's these prospects are exposed to in the college ranks? Because it seems like a lot of more prospects, not just quarterbacks, but really at every level of the field, they seem to be coming in a few steps behind considerably.
Well, it's just a different game. The caliber of competition and the level is just a step up. And the scheme is everybody's doing the same thing. Okay, so it's not a matter of you do have to make sure that what you're doing and what you're asking of your quarterback fits his particular skill set. Plus, it also has to do with what's around him. One of the hardest things to do is to separate the play of a quarterback from what's going on around him. A young player that's got a good running game, good defense, and they're only asking him to put it up maybe 20, 25 times a game. That's certainly a better learning curve and one that is more conducive to him to have success than a guy that steps in and is on a bad team and is surrounded by not as good athletes and now has to scramble around. That's a tougher curve. And unfortunately, particularly for top-round picks, if you get them in, say, the first 10 picks, well, you're probably there because you're not a very good team and you need a quarterback. So unfortunately, they get put in circumstances that sometimes is tough to develop.
We're on with Brian Billick, Super Bowl 35 champion head coach of the Baltimore Ravens.
Yes, unfortunately, there you were Super Bowl champions there, Brian. Not just kidding. You beat us along the way. I always got to say that. Coach, man, every week, and I wasn't a big, oh, man, the refereeing was horrible. But, man, over the last couple years, I think the NFL, and maybe just in general, all leagues in football are having a referee problem. Maybe it's because of the instant replay. But, man, what do you think is the root cause of all the inconsistent refereeing? And because it's destroying games and it's costing, coaches jobs and, games lost. And how would you fix it to address it? If you
Well, I'm no fan of the officials. You know, I was fined over $100,000.
Tough job.
Yeah, going after the officials, and trust me, they take that money now. That's not just symbolic. When they find you, you got to pay the fine. I actually think the officiating is probably about as good as we can get it. It could always be better, but with the instant replay, and when you go back and you look at the calls and the percentages of calls, right or wrong, if you can subjectively look at that, it's pretty darn good. Now, it's frustrating when there are the individual calls that maybe cost a game that they got it wrong. The consistency that is true from one crew to another. The league likes to believe that the crews called all the same, but they don't. In fact, we used to, every Wednesday when we'd play, we'd give a scouting report on the officiating crew we had. Some crews would call offensive pass interference more versus defense. Some would call holding more than others. The subjective calls I'm talking about. And so, yeah, it is that way. But I think, I don't know if there is a better fix. I'm not one for adding an official. I'm not one for making them full-time, because I think you're going to get a lot of good officials that do other things that would leave the profession. But I think with the training that they have, and in particular with the instant replay, that can catch the egregious error, I think the percentage of calls that they get right is pretty good, and it's just kind of something you got to live with.
Kind of take us through when you get an apology about a missed call. Is that a letter, a call, an email? Are they avoiding having conversations so you can just really light into them and say thanks but no thanks? I mean, kind of take us through your emotions too at that time.
Yeah, it is a kind of a questionable process. I remember when I went into broadcasting, was doing games, and we meet with the officials as well. And I knew all these guys from my time in the league, and I'd always start the meeting by going, and I know I'm your worst nightmare, because I can rip your butt now, and I'm not going to get fined for it. Okay. But it was one of, yes, there is a process, and you go through the film and you log where you think you question a call, and then you send it into the league, and they get back, and they'll go through a review of, well, this is what we saw, and occasionally they'll say, yes, he got it wrong, sorry, my bad, and it's, okay, so be it. And then before the game, you'll meet with the officials, and if you want to highlight certain things, which I got to the point where I didn't even want to do that, because the minute you start, you go into those meetings, you say, look, these guys do an awful lot of offensive holding, so I'd really like you to watch it. And then you get 5 offensive holding calls on your side of the ball. So, I just got to the point where I'll just let them call it and go from there.
Well, Coach, you've done a lot of developing, and we've talked about quarterbacks, and we've talked about different quarterbacks. But what do you see when you watch Will Levis, and how much have you watched him to even giving him evaluation and see some things that maybe concern you and some things that get you excited about his play?
Well, he clearly has the physical abilities. And again, I've got to qualify it. I can't say I've looked at enough of snaps of Will Levis since he's been in the league to really, a qualified opinion. But what little I have seen, clearly the physical skills are there. It's really a matter of the maturation of what does a quarterback see, and can he make that next step? That's really where, with quarterbacks, you either make it or you don't make it. We always talk about quarterbacks. Well, the game slows down for them. Well, that's ridiculous. The game literally doesn't slow down. What happens is they begin to see it more clearly. They begin to see things more clearly, and they'll be able to anticipate a little bit. So that's the thing that I'd be looking for right now. Does he continually make the same mistakes? Is he throwing? And you can't say, well, he's throwing the ball into coverage or he's throwing the ball where it shouldn't be. Well, the great ones do. The great ones know where they can put the ball and put it safely and accurately enough to give the receiver a chance, and yet not risk the interception to touchdown ratio. And not all quarterbacks can do it. At the end of the day, that's usually what eliminates a quarterback from the league, is because anybody can throw it up, and they all have strong arms, and they can all do that. But it's that judgment is where can I put the ball accurately, and should I put it here? I've always challenged people. I said, you'd be amazed if I could put you in the eyes of a quarterback, how little they can actually see when they go to throw the ball. So those that can develop the ability to see the field and know where to put the ball safely, at a higher percentage time than the other guy, well, those are the ones that go on and play a long time in the NFL are good. And that's with Will Levis right now. It's can he start to make those kind of throws, not just force the ball in, because is he developing the abilities and the vision to know where to put the ball in, as opposed to just, well, I'm just going to throw it in here and hope the guy makes a catch.
We're on with former Super Bowl NFL head coach Brian Billick.
You know, dating back to his days in Kentucky, he's obviously had 2 offensive coordinators there and then 2 offensive coordinators since entering the NFL. So how difficult of an adjustment is it for a quarterback like Levis or any quarterback who has had 4 different coordinators in 4 straight years?
It does make a difference because it is an adjustment, and you've got to get used to the style of play that they're looking for, and the coordinator has to get used to him to make sure that you're doing the things that he does best and not putting him in situations where he doesn't thrive. So that is a factor, but in today's league, there is that kind of turnover, and even in college now, the way these players move around, the ability to adapt. The good thing is as I said, everybody's doing the same thing from one system to the next, and the reads are the same. So it's just a matter of being able to mature in a system and understand what the reads are within the system, within the plays, and what they're asking of you. And again, it is incumbent on the coordinators to make sure, because some guys throw different balls better than others, and to make sure that you're not putting him in a situation or asking him to do something that really doesn't fit his skills.
When we watch Will Levis here these last few weeks, he has developed these last few games since going on he was on a hiatus for injury. But we also saw that, Anthony Richardson got benched, and then you saw Bryce Young get benched, but all 3 of those guys have pretty much came back since coming back, have played better. What is it about being on the sidelines for a young quarterback that maybe helped these 3 guys in their time on the bench pretty much?
You learn nothing from the bench. All it does is put you on notice that when you come back, you better play well or you're gone. So that motivation is about the only thing that brings it back into focus. When you bench a young quarterback like that, that usually doesn't turn out well. Well, now we'll see. We'll see if it turns out for the guys that you're referencing. But usually when you bench him, and use all the normal, cliches of, well, this gives us the best chance to win because you go with you're basically saying because he hasn't played well enough. And he doesn't learn, he doesn't get any better by not playing, and he comes back in. You hope that now he can begin to play better and see things a little bit better, but it has stunted his growth. And usually, I can't think of a single instance where a young quarterback, particularly a high draft choice, a younger quarterback that you're trying to develop and maybe put in before his time, but if it's a top draft choice, you've made that decision, and if you pull him, to put him back is usually an act of desperation of either, well, the guy I put in got hurt, or he's failing now, so I got to try to do something to see if I can turn this around. It usually does not turn out well. Now, that doesn't mean that those players then don't go someplace else. We've seen that, obviously, up in Minnesota with Darnold. He's kind of resurrected his career a little bit. Ryan Tannehill, obviously, here in Tennessee, that they're very familiar with, going from Miami and not doing well as a first-round pick, coming in to Tennessee and playing well and kind of resurrect. That can certainly happen. But within the team that he starts with, if he gets benched and then brought back in, boy, I've been in this game a while, man and boy, and I've never seen that turn out too well.
What can a young quarterback do? Will Levis struggles with a little bit of pocket awareness and presence, and listen, he hasn't had the greatest offensive line, these last 2 seasons. But what can a young quarterback do in season to maybe incrementally improve that as the season goes on?
Well, and that's a tough one because clearly what's going on around him is a factor. And when you don't have consistent protection and one where you're dropping back and your focus needs to be on something other than the protection, but you can't help by instinct going, boy, is this thing going to collapse around me, and what's the time? That's really that developmental process I'm talking about with a quarterback who begins to really develop a sense of how long he can hold on to the ball into the pocket. All you can really do is, particularly if you're struggling a little bit on the offensive line and there is some inconsistency, he's going to learn the protection. Okay, these 6 guys have those 6 guys. If they come, I'm all right. And it matches up right, but then all it takes is one guy getting beat. And now all of a sudden you start to question that timing. You question the protections. You can certainly do things, heavy play action, get him outside the pocket to buy a little time, to get away from the rush, to make the throws down the field. But that's that's probably the single toughest sequence for a quarterback, when the protection around him is a little bit iffy, and that speeds up his clock, and that's not a good thing.
We're on with Super Bowl 35 champion head coach of the Baltimore Ravens, Brian Billick.
Well, Coach, I really thought it was a unique idea, for the Vikings, which I wanted the Titans to do it, bring in Daniel Jones and put him on the practice squad and get to evaluate him and see if you want to bring him in next year, and especially if you had an injury this year. But what were your thoughts when you saw Daniel Jones being released and then now being on the practice squad, which gives him an opportunity if someone gets hurt on another team, a starter, they can bring him back in somewhere else as well?
Yeah. Interesting move, because obviously with J.J. McCarthy being hurt, and he's going to be the quarterback going forward for Minnesota, Sam Darnold's come in and played very well. A little up and down at times, but certainly better than what we anticipated on a team that's very, very good. Runs the ball, plays good defense, has an outstanding receiver. So it's a good situation. I can see Daniel Jones why he would want to go to the Vikings, because if he does get an opportunity to play, he knows he's surrounded by a pretty good team. But that was an interesting pickup, and I understand why Jones chose the Vikings. The Vikings choosing him, interesting, and not the least of which is now with a guy that you've kind of resurrected and feel good about, but has had some issues from one game to the next, like every quarterback. You bring a guy like Daniel Jones, not that he's the next coming, but do you now put a little question in Sam Darnold's mind as to, well, do these guys really believe in me? Do they really think I'm the guy? And the rest of the team as well. So I thought that was a curious signing.
Yeah, I thought it was injury prevention type signing, and really, if something happens to Darnold, then they have a security blanket there.
Sure.
But
which is very legitimate.
Yeah. NFL, we have two elite running backs in Shaquan, Big Henry. But, man, if I would have gave you two names to say as your top two candidates for MVP, who would they be as of today?
It's an interesting premise that you put out there, because obviously there's always the debate of, at the end of the day, the quarterback's going to get it because he has the numbers. But let's look at the definition, and I'm very much one for, look at the definition of MVP, the most valuable player, meaning the most valuable player to that team that's obviously doing well. And I don't think, and I'm, obviously with Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, all that, they've been spectacular. But when you look at what Saquon Barkley has done for the Philadelphia Eagles and what he's meant to that team, not that Jalen Hurts obviously isn't as good as well, I think clearly he should be in the MVP conversation. And not that Derrick Henry shouldn't, but there again, you got Lamar Jackson, they got the defense though. But I think what Saquon Barkley has done and changing the identity of that team and what he's meant to that team, I think he's, in my opinion, very much an MVP candidate.
Well, had you ever seen anybody ever jump over somebody like he did when he spun around and then backwards jumped over him? I thought that was so incredible. I was like, wow.
That was amazing. And I got to ask you, as a player, when does that occur to you to do that?
I think he just did a spin move and then he got like, I'm in trouble, and just jumped like that.
You're absolutely, all he needed to do it more is come out of it with a backflip and go, then you'd have had to give him a 10 out of 10. But you're right. That was, like I said, I've been in this game a long time. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Well, Coach, before we let you go, we want to ask you about your work with X-Tech Pads and what that is and what you're doing with them.
Well, they've been around a while. I've been with X-Tech from the beginning. This is the next level of protection for our players. X-Tech Pads. It's the number one pad in professional football, number one pad in the upper divisions in the major college, and the top high schools in the country. And next year going into the youth pad, which is great. I've got two grandsons that are playing. I can't wait to get them in X-Tech Pads. In the old days, big guys wore big pads, little guys wore little pads. These are basically fitted pads that take into account your age, your height, your weight, your injury history, your position. It's the next level of protection, like all the things that evolved in the game. And X-Tech Pads is leading the forefront of that. It's the best pad in the business. We're currently in the Black Friday sale until Monday. It's live now, 20% off. You can go to xtechpads.com. And even better, when you go to xtechpads.com, you can use its virtual equipment man that basically will take you, okay, here's the parameters, here's the size of the athlete I'm talking about, here's what he plays, and it will basically form fit the right pad for him. This is absolutely the best protection for our young people in what's a great game, but a very physical and dangerous game. They need to go to xtechpads.com.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate it, Coach. That's Brian Billick with Super Bowl 35 champion head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. Hope you have a happy holidays.
We'll do it, guys.
All right, thanks. That was, of course, he was talking about X-Tech pads. That's the Black Friday deals, 20% off and free shipping site-wide, xtechpads.com. When we come back, we'll talk more about the Tennessee Titans. We'll talk more about the Vandy matchup with the Volunteers. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons on 104.5 The Zone. Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors. 615-737-1045 if you want to get in on the conversation. I thought it was interesting when we were talking to Brian Billick, former head coach of the Baltimore Ravens, that he said that Bill Walsh, the great Bill Walsh, and who are we to argue with anything that Bill Walsh said, based on his track record with quarterbacks and offenses and all that kind of stuff. As about the 24th or 25th game, you should know whether he's the guy or not. And obviously, Will Levis he's started 17 games, but he's really only played 15 full games from start to finish because there was the Texans game last year and the Miami game this year. So what are your thoughts on that? Does that need to be adjusted because of the modern era of football? Or do you think that 24, 25, that's about, back in the day, that would have been about, what, a season and a half?
Yeah, I would say probably in the modern era that needs to be adjusted. Now, naturally, that was Bill Washington days where they don't have all the technology and everything else to advance. They didn't have 7-on-7. So now quarterbacks are getting developed a lot faster. I think the one thing I wish we would have followed up with him on that is how many starts should he have had in college coming into the pros? Did that matter?
Yeah.
Based off what
mattered to Bill Parcells.
Right, it did. See, and all those old school coaches really kind of looked at the quarterback in different manner because they had to go put in the homework and the work. So I would assume that I think Bill Parcells said the quarterback had to start like 3 years or somewhere. It added up to about 3 years in college. So just think Richardson wouldn't even been on the radar for him to even draft. I think he said something like, I don't remember how many starts, 6 starts or something to that effect.
He said Bill Parcells said they needed to start 30 games.
30 games.
Win 23 games minimum.
Mm-hmm. See, so.
And graduate. He had like 6 or 7 things you had to be. You had to be listen to this. You had to be a 3-year starter, senior quarterback. You had to play your senior year as quarterback, graduate, start 30 games, win 23 games minimum, post a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and have at least a career 60% completion percentage in your college. And so far,
so he would have never drafted Josh Allen either, by the way.
Yeah, so let me tell you. So this would have meant since dating back to Joe Flacco and Matt Ryan. Okay?
Okay.
These are the people that qualified under that. Andrew Luck, Baker Mayfield, Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, Justin Herbert, Kenny Pickett, Michael Penix Jr., and Tim Tebow actually qualified for that as well. Okay. So there you go.
Right, I think that's a good
more
start.
Often than not, that seems pretty proven, right?
Yeah, it does. But, in this day and age, we're not probably going to get a 3-year starter. So how does that change how you look at a quarterback? Now they're starting, 2 years and then coming out, redshirted 2 years, maybe 3 years, or played half of one of those seasons before when they first got started. Yeah. And, so it's just, I think you want to see some of those same values along the way, but I think it's changed a little bit. I would say really close to that. I would say 23 starts or so in college. So, you're 12 and 12, so at least 2 seasons where you get to see a good mass of games to really get to know what he really is. So 2 seasons for me, I think would be cool. But, yeah.
Anthony Richardson, the only quarterback drafted since, Joe Flacco, like I said,
15 stars,
is the only one that has 0. He doesn't hit any of these measurables. 0? Josh Allen only hit 1.
I said he would take that. That just shows you. And see, that's why I say you have to have conversations. Mm-hmm. Some of these players are wound up a little bit differently, and they're going to put in the work. It's hard to judge that, but I also would put on their leadership skills. I think that would be very pivotal and vital with a quarterback, with everybody looking to the sideline in college now, and then getting the play. Then now all of a sudden you're in there with grown men with gray hair and their beards, and you now tell them what to do, and now you're giving a dialogue of a play, which these plays to call are really long. So I want mine to have leadership skills, and you want to see him to be the captain, and not the captain just because he was the quarterback, because he had those leadership skills, not just because he was a great player. So those are all important to me right off the cuff. Doesn't mean they're all going to have success. You're not going to hit home runs on all of them. But if you kind of stick to that, I think some of the platforms you said there, well as Parcells and Billick, man, I think you have a great shot. So where does Will Levis fit under these, traits that we want to say that they all should have?
Yeah, I know that he had the at least 60% completion percentage. And then, but he didn't have the 3-year starter. Was not a 3-year starter.
He hit the 2 for me, right?
Yeah, he hit 2. He did not win 23 games, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to go back and check.
He didn't win 23.
Yeah, because I only did the first round quarterbacks. I didn't do the second round quarterback. So I'm kind of having to
guessing off the top.
Yeah, guessing off the top of my head. But he was senior quarterback. I guess you would, would be senior quarterback. Probably graduated, I would assume.
I would assume.
So I mean, he hits some of them, but really the 30 game starts, the 23 game wins, probably one of the more important things, because that's something that also Daniel Jeremiah and them have talked about, was you want to play a certain number of games, and that seemed to be, I think if I recall correctly, it was 29 and a half. So
what was this?
So, Levis wasn't really there at that point. So it will be interesting to see.
Touchdown ratio, interception ratio?
I'd have to go back and look.
Okay.
But it's interesting to see, because even if you hit 6 or 5 of them, you're still probably a draftable quarterback. It'll be interesting to see now that, he put that little Bill Walsh nugget in my ear that you want to know before then. And he was strictly really talking about the first round guys. First round guys you should know by now. Will Levis, second round guy. He has shown development, has suffered an injury last year. He had an injury setback this year. Since coming back from the injury, he's looked really good. But, we're about, 6 or 7 games away from really being close to knowing, according to the Bill Walsh standard.
Mm-hmm. And that's to the end of the season, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. So you should know by the end of the season, at least, can he be maybe the guy for 2025? And I think we both are leaning that is going to be the likely scenario, because he is a guy that obviously, if you build around it, this will be the first time. Think about it this way. This will be the first time that Will Levis will have offensive consistency if they keep him in 2025.
Yeah, that was a great question you asked him about, the different coordinators over the last 4 years. That's tough. And then that alone, the pieces in place around him that are all different too at the same time. But you're not going to make excuses. You got to play with what you have. But that is a factor. He admitted that. That does factor in there. And that's chemistry. That's been on par, and everybody thinking on the same page with your, coordinator, which is now here, the head coach. So, yeah, but that's why I said he was starting from scratch from the beginning of the season. We could talk about all we want to in the off season. Bullets aren't flying. They're not real.
Right.
That's just practice.
And think about it this way: how many sacks has the right tackles allowed? If you're able to draft a right tackle and maybe use a pick on that instead of a quarterback, or use that pick on that, in the second round, how much better will Levis be when he's in the system for the second time in a row, and he has a better offensive line? Yeah. I mean, some of this stuff does matter from when you're looking at Will Levis, but you can, outside of offensive line play, you can objectively put Will Levis's performance in a vacuum and realize whether he's the guy or not. Mm-hmm. Does not mean he can't get better, but are you talking that means kind of like 2025 is, okay, we can win enough games with Will Levis to remain competitive and keep our jobs, because those are the two things they're going to be thinking about, right? Mm-hmm. Brian Callen's going to be thinking about that. Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker are going to be thinking about, is he good enough in 2025 to win games enough to be competitive and to keep our jobs safe? That's the nature of the NFL, right?
Yeah, it's somewhat. I would say in this case, I think you could sell to the owner, this is not our drafted guy. We thought we could work with him. It just didn't play out. That, okay, even going into next season, we will see where he's at then we'll reassess. This is not a good quarterback draft. Now, let's see where he's at from here, and then we'll find out after next season if he can really be a guy. If not, I'm buying myself more time as a coach and the GM and whoever else is up there making those decisions besides the owner, if we need to draft a quarterback. Here's the answer I want you to think about over the break, and we're going to come back and talk about it, and that is, if you switched Will Levis to the Texans team and put C.J. Stroud on this team, how good would Will Levis be and how good would C.J. Stroud be? Think about that during the break.
Well, I'll think about that during the break. We'll talk about that, because I do have an interesting answer about that. So we'll talk about that. Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone.
For many of you who have lived here a long time, you already know Eurofix has been in Middle Tennessee area for your European car repair needs now for 24 years. We've all gotten to watch them grow. And I don't know about you, but I love watching a hometown business take off. Well, we're now proud to announce the 5th location in Mount Juliet for Eurofix on Mount Juliet Road, right across the street from Dairy Queen. And Eurofix can serve you in Franklin, Hundred Oaks, Murfreesboro, Belmead, and now Mount Juliet. Pretty cool getting to watch a small-town mechanic starting a barn in his backyard of a single-wide trailer and now grow to 5 locations, repairing thousands of cars each month. And at Eurofix, you get a 3-year nationwide warranty and a free loaner car with every repair appointment. And all you have to do is just give them a call at 844-EUROFIX. That's right, 844-EUROFIX, or you can just visit them online at myEurofix.com. That's myEurofix.com. But I was still Blaze, job.
Cover 2, Hour 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Door, 615-737-1045. We are awaiting the presser of Will Levis, and we'll send it to the QB1 when he's up at the podium. But you posed an interesting question, Blaine, and so reiterate what your question is.
Yeah, after, I was watching the Texans game and I was like, man, C.J. Stroud seems like he's going through some form of a sophomore slump and, throwing interceptions, throwing it to the same thing that Levis did earlier in the, season in Miami, throwing it to the wrong spot on a typical hitch route, really a 5-yard curl. And he was really in his own head. I don't think he's probably the athlete, but he's probably a more polished quarterback in general. If I watched him have pocket presence, he can scramble around, he can move around. I think he's the athlete that Levis is. Levis probably has a bigger arm, but we all know it's all about accuracy on intermediate. You're going to do that a lot more. So I was thinking, okay, if Levis had the offensive line, let's say C.J. Stroud had last year with the running game that he has and the weapons that he has, and then everything was already pretty much in place and a really good defense, how would Levis perform? And I didn't know the answer, but it made me think that way. And that's why I wanted to pose to Boy Wonder over here to kind of break it down of what you think. Naturally, we've seen C.J. Stroud have success, so we know what it looks like. But having success and then coming back that second year and not having success, did you rest on your laurels? Or not having success your first year and then come back hopefully better than before?
So I would look at it like this. I don't think – this is tough. So I think this year's Texans with this year Will Levis would be worse. Okay? I think this year's Stroud on this year's Titans would be better. And the reason I think that is because I have way more faith in Brian Callahan than I do in Bobby Slowick. And I really liked the idea when we hired Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel was putting together his coaching staff and all that kind of stuff. I really thought that maybe I was hoping they'd bring over Bobby Slowick because I really liked his background. I liked what I saw, what I've read up about him, what I've heard. And then last year, he really lived up to it. But the more I've heard in the background, from guys that cover the Houston and everything, is like, he's not really that guy. He doesn't really adjust very well. And he is a run, pass kind of guy.
He's a younger guy, right?
Yeah. He comes from the Shanahan tree and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm looking at this year and I'm like, man, there's a chance that they may move on from Bobby Slowick. Because
really?
The whole offense has generally regressed, right? Right. And so if you watch this offensive line, because the big thing has been about Shaq Mason for the Texans. Like Shaq Mason has declined bad. He's not picking up the right linebacker. It looks like there's a lot of plays where the offensive line doesn't know who to block, what the play is, and all that kind of stuff. And it really just seemed that they caught lightning in a bottle. And I expected some kind of slump. But the slump that they're really in compared to last year, and this goes to the whole aspect of the NFL, right? The whole NFL in its entirety, it's hard to keep magic and all that kind of stuff going, right? But I look at it and I go, I don't know if Bobby Slowick would know how to coach with Will Levis and coach around Will Levis. Whereas we know that Brian Callahan, because Bobby Slowick came from the defensive side of the football as a defensive quality control coach, moved over, and he's had limited exposure on the offensive side of the ball with what Shanahan was doing. And I look at it and I go, I don't think the coaching and the scheme that Bobby Slowick employs could overcome what Will Levis could do. Whereas with Brian Callahan, who has exposure with multiple different kinds of quarterbacks and everything, we've seen him be able to develop and get stuff out of Will Levis that maybe other coaches would give up on and wouldn't do. And I feel like, okay, he can do a lot with this year's C.J. Stroud. I think that you're talking about Titans would probably be maybe not the same record, 7-5 as like the Texans are, but probably tied for first with the Colts. Maybe they're 5-6, and and that kind of swing, like a 2-game, 3-game swing.
Well, Levis lost 2 games doing the snafus.
Yeah.
So then that makes it somewhat the same.
Yeah, well, there you go. That meaning C.J. Stroud wouldn't have lost you those games.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So
So,
that's what I'm getting at.
That to me right there is like, yeah, I think that I think Brian Callahan could do a lot with Stroud. I think they would have been, maybe I'm underselling it, but I think that this offense would have moved so much better and so much easier right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would probably agree with that because I really feel like C.J. Stroud, when you see him play, you don't see any flaws like that you say, oh, he's not throwing the ball on time. Oh, he doesn't have a feel for the pocket. He is a true quarterback. Did he make some bad plays? And I'm talking about like just throw it to the other team. Well, Levis is also doing that. So I would say you have, less to work with as far as to fix with C.J. Stroud. I think you look at him more as this guy looks like he's played in this league for 5, 6, 7 years already. Where Levis, you say, oh, the potential's there. I have to develop it. And then we're developing other pieces around him. And then his flaws are going to be, even seen a little bit more. So, I would agree. But I did want to say that based off of, because what made me really think about it, because the wins are always attached to the quarterback and the head coach. Well, then he beat Stroud head to head. It's no different when Tennessee beat Alabama head to head, but Tennessee is ranked lower than them. That doesn't mean that they're better than them. See, C.J. Stroud is the better quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
At least
for sure.
as of right now.
And I think even the sophomore slump aside and the away splits, home away splits and all that kind of stuff, to me, C.J. Stroud has proven that he can be the guy in the NFL. Mm. And he's still got to find that consistency, but I do wonder how much of that is tied with maybe not a very personable and flexible offensive coordinator. Mm. So that's just kind of where I'm at. Like, Brian Callahan is very flexible. He's adaptable. He's trying to call these plays and put these plays in that will benefit Will Levis. And even he talked about in the presser today, he was like, basically someone asked, it's you kind of told Will that, the plays will come and the explosive plays will be there. And he's kind of learned how to let the game come to him. And now all these explosive plays are happening. And Brian Callahan's like, yeah, funny how that happens. Like, the guy had to get comfortable. It took time.
He had to learn him.
And so did everybody else. Everybody but Tyler Boyd was learning essentially a new scheme. It's
just funny. Some guys get it faster. Like, we could say that about the Texans. Why do they do it so fast? Well, you can't predict the time frame that it's going to happen. Sometimes it comes together quickly. Sometimes when you bring in different pieces, it takes a little bit of time.
And sometimes when it comes together quickly, that's not really who you are.
Right. Uh-huh.
I mean, look at Jay. Look at
you act like you played before.
I played ninth grade. But you look at it and I look at what they did, what the Texans did last year out of the gate. Uh-huh. They were a little slow, but they really kicked it up, right? Mm-hmm. And then this year, it's like they kind of started, but now they're starting to dwindle. And people are really knowing how to attack the Texans' offensive line, their weaknesses, the defense. And then you go on the flip side and you look at like the Washington Commanders is a good example. Mm-hmm. We know that Cliff Kingsbury tends to die out as the season goes on.
Or people figure him out, his offense.
People figure him and his offense out. And I think that's what's happening with the Texans. And but they started off hot, right? We were talking about Jaden Daniels MVP, Jaden Daniels Offensive Rookie of the Year, and all this stuff. And I was doing it. I was bought in. When's the last time we've had that conversation? And now Bo Nix is started off slow and is starting to catch fire right now. So it's just the ebbs and flows of the NFL. And right now, I mean, I feel like the Tennessee Titans got the Texans at the right time. I feel like they're getting the Commanders at the right time. And this schedule, sub 400 win-loss record for all the opponents combined the rest of the way.
Because it's mostly AFC South, right?
Yeah, most of it's the AFC South. Bengals thrown in there, but but that's a exclamation point though. Mm-hmm. It's because of the AFC South, and they're 1-1 in division play, and they have 4 more games to go. And all of them are pretty bad teams, except for the Texans. But the Colts is a winnable game. That you have 2 games against the Jaguars. All this stuff. The Jaguars in 2022 started off 4-8, and they ended up on a big win streak while the Tennessee Titans were on a big losing streak. That last game, boom.
I've been on a team we started 1-4 and won 11 in a row.
There you go.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then it was heartbreaking and wrenching when we lost in the second
The
round.
math would tell you it's very improbable, and I would
is.
agree, but it's not impossible. And
Rookie
sometimes
year.
that's all that matters. Sometimes it's all that matters. When we come back, we'll talk about Tennessee Volunteers and Vandy because we haven't done that matchup. And if Will Levis is at the podium, we'll switch it to him. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone. Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop, Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors, 615-737-1045. We're going to go straight to the phones because Tony the Stud from the Borough wants to talk about Levis's footwork. Tony, you're on with Blaine and Zach.
Zach, how you doing? Blaine, how's it going?
Going good.
You got it.
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody here at The Zone and to y'all as well.
Yeah, but you too.
Hey, man, I just had a couple of things to share with y'all. First off, I wanted to let everybody know at The Zone that we're putting the name Tony the Stud to rest. Jonathan Schaefer, 4.5 years ago, gave me that name, and we're making a switch over after got the official USCG captain's license over this past year. So going to be making the phone calls as Captain Tony from now on. So
love it.
I just want to let y'all know that. Man, I just wanted to ask y'all about Will Levis. I know every time I call in to talk to you and Blaine and Zach, I always talk to you about Will Levis. But I just had one question about it. Over the last 3 or 4 weeks, when you're watching his footwork, listening to Greg Cosell and Coach Mack and some of the guys talking about footwork and presence in the pocket and being able to, recognize where he needs to go and his outlets and stuff like that after his reads, I went back and watched the last 3 or 4 games and just looked at his footwork and stuff. And he looked kind of hoppy to me, kind of jumpy, like he seemed like he got off his feet in the air a whole lot. I just didn't know if that was something that y'all noticed, or if you did notice that, if that's common with other quarterbacks in the league. He just seemed like he when he was moving around, he's both feet off the ground at the same time, just seemed like he was kind of making these vertical little hops. I just want to get your opinion on that, see if y'all had seen any of that. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Captain Tony. Yeah, I seen a little bit of that. That was also on his tape. It was almost every quarterback, it feels like, coming out of college has that problem. There's some of them compound it, though. Like Malik Willis was kind of a hopper, but then he would pat the ball a lot. He was a little toesies in his throw, getting up on his toes when he throws. So there's always those kinds of certain situations for me when I'm looking at these quarterbacks. I find that he's doing it less, though. And I think that when you're doing it a lot, just any amount can lessen it and make it seem like a lot. But I do think that he's doing it less. I really don't find that he's drifting to the left or to the right anymore either in terms of his movement in the pocket. Yeah, but he doesn't sense it. So, then you got a little give and take.
Yeah, I would say I see it more often than not when he gets surprised with the hopping. And I think it's a mechanism to help him get to where he wants to be so he can at least let a pass go if he needs to.
Right.
Because it's a little bit of a, oh my God, I gotta get to where I need to so I can, because a lot of times quarterbacks, as we know to most people, even Billick said it earlier, they can't see, they're throwing to spots.
Yeah.
So they can't actually see, everything is not clear. That's the difference between college and pro. College, you throw it and the guy's open. In the pros, you throw to a spot and you throw them open.
Yeah. It was interesting that you say that because I was looking at some of the plays in the fourth quarter after, he threw the pick 6 in the third quarter, and I was looking at that in the fourth, all of his pass plays. And he took a deep shot and he was throwing to the red line. So the hash marks, that area between the hash marks on the sidelines to NWI. NWI got rerouted, so it looks like an overthrow. Now, he was also getting hit at the time. He's under pressure. But he made a throw that was like 40-something yards down the field. It was ridiculous.
Even though it was right there on the edge of the out of bounds, right? Is that the play you're talking about?
Yeah, so Will Levis is at the podium, so we're going to toss it over to St. Thomas Sports Park to hear from QB1.
Has the ball and improving, putting, feel like more consistent ball on tape. But, the exciting thing is that there's still a lot to get better at and a lot to clean up and a lot to put us in a better opportunity to win games. So, we feel like, we were right there in those 2 games before this past one, and it was good to finally get over the hump and get the dub. Hopefully we can get through this week and keep improving and put another winning performance together on Sunday.
You talked after the tough start about rewiring some elements of your game, which sounded like it'd be a tough, long process. You've had 3 pretty solid games now. To what degree do you feel like you have rewired?
I haven't tried to do anything too crazy, just continuing to study the right stuff and have the right thought processes with the offense and with whatever play is being called. And I'm getting more comfortable with the offense. Been able to get more of those throws under my belt in game situations. And I just feel like I've grown alongside everyone else in this offense throughout the whole year. So, we knew that, it was going to take a little bit to kind of get into our groove and get a feel of this offensive system. And it's crazy to think how much we've developed, I feel like, since that week one.
Some of that stuff kind of taking care of itself?
Yeah, no, I'd say so. I credit everyone else and how they've been working. Everyone's making each other's jobs easier. I think everyone's doing everything they can to improve themselves to help the team win, but I think just the overall improvement as a whole has just felt like each and every one of our individual jobs has come a little easier, which is a cool feeling.
Callahan had noted how you're more comfortable, the guys around you are more comfortable, they're in the places where they need to be and things like that. That time off, do you think there was like a recalibration period for you? And what is behind the comfort just overall that everyone has?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously they were out there getting those reps while I was out. And so I think they definitely got more confident and more comfortable with all those reps that they were getting. And I was trying to make sure that I was getting those mental reps at the same time right along with them. So while I was out, I was making sure I was as involved as I would have been if I was playing in practice and doing everything I could outside the building to take care of myself physically and mentally. And I wanted to make sure when I was back that I was ready to roll and in a great spot, which I felt like I was. And just got to keep getting better and keep getting more comfortable in this offense.
He's talked about, Callie's talked about himself feeling more comfortable with what he knows about you and the offense. Have you noticed that as well? Like his increased comfort level and maybe increased knowledge of what works well for you, for the other skill guys too?
Yeah, I think so. I think just seeing the game plans put together throughout the past handful of weeks, I do feel like with what he's leaned towards calling or what he feels comfortable with or what he's comfortable with calling multiple times, it's because he's been able to see us go out there and execute those plays to a high level. And he has trust in me that I'm going to be able to see it well and make the right decisions and check the ball down when we need to and come back to it and try to get the shot later. So like I said, I'm just trying to keep getting better in all those areas, and Callie's done an awesome job just catering the game plan to our strengths, I feel like, the last few weeks, and we just got to keep working together in that respect for the rest of the year.
How do you feel about your pocket awareness at this point, and how much is that something that can develop over time for you?
Yeah, I got to be better. I think that's one of the harder parts about playing the position, keeping your eyes downfield while at the same time having awareness of what's going on around you and moving your lower body while still keeping your upper body focused and calm. And I feel like I've done a good job in some situations of finding those areas and finding the either seam to try to escape or just buy the extra second to get the ball out. But I've definitely put some guys up front in some tough spots here and there. And, we know that some of those sacks I'll take on me, and I'll be honest and speak up when it is like that. But we're all going to take accountability about everything. And the only thing I can do to help those is to focus on what I can to limit them. So, yeah, I think I can get better at it, but it's just something that I got to keep working on and, just got to do my job to limit those.
They work on Sundays, or what can you do during practice to kind of improve in that?
We have drills that we'll work on and working on our base and pocket movement stuff and Indian stuff that I feel like have helped in the past, and we'll continue to work on those. But I feel like it mostly comes in the game reps and when you're actually going to get hit and you have the threat of being tackled. So, those are where you get the experience, I'd say.
I said Monday that you played well on Sunday and over the last 2 or 3 weeks, but he said that there's still another level he thinks that can be unlocked as far as your ability. In your mind, what is that?
I think for me, I'm not trying to hunt up any big plays or try to force anything, but I do understand that, especially down in the red zone, being able to get out of the pocket and understanding when things kind of break down and the read gets off 1-2. It might only be a couple times a game, but sometimes those are the plays that can really jumpstart a team, get that explosive play, get that touchdown in the red zone. And, I'm not looking for that again, but it's something that I feel like I can get better at, and just finding those rushing lanes and when it's, an opportunity to get out the pocket and make something like that happen. So it's a dangerous game. You don't want to drop back and be like, all right, I'm going to scramble this play and try to go off schedule and make a crazy play. It's got to be reactionary. It's got to be in the right moment, in the right situation. I've done it here and there, but I got to get better at it. And then, I can clean up, that interception. I feel like without that, I feel like that's a pretty dang clean game, like top to bottom, just accurate balls, good decisions. But when you have something like that on your resume from a game, it's hard not to like think about it. And I feel like without that, I would have felt a whole lot better about it. But if we can go those games without like one of those plays, then it's going to be tough to stop us.
Will that win at Houston be a foundational piece for what you guys can be going forward, especially for the young core?
Yeah, I think it's something we needed for the rest of the season to give us the confidence to go out and play these last divisional games, with the energy and focus that we need. Being able to get the win on the road against the top team in the division at the moment just gives us confidence and lets us know that we can go out there and beat all the rest of these teams that we have on our schedule, just like we feel like we could have every team that we've faced so far. So definitely it's a lot of confidence. Some guys that have been able to step in and play some really good ball, and excited for them and everyone else to just continue working and improving throughout these last few weeks.
The passing game, the success that you had, you mentioned not pressing and not chasing plays. Even though we know you like to throw the ball deep, but how much does not chasing those deep plays help just allow things to develop and become more successful?
That's the name of the game. They're gonna, if you've proven to show that you're gonna be careless with the football and throw it up and push the ball downfield, then you're gonna allow those secondary players to just keep playing with more and more depth, and they're not going to let you have them. So you got to take those ones underneath. You got to set them up. I mentioned how the coaches did a great job of aiding us and, penciling up some really good stuff to get those downfield shots. And we just so happened to get the looks that we were looking for. Wasn't forcing it, just reacting, and put some good balls out there. So it was cool to see that all come together and, I guess, put one of my strengths on display.
Ryan was complimentary of your ability to do that and not force the magic in many ways. He said he feels like you've changed your thought process about what's required to play quarterback. Is there a specific learning experience that you feel like led to that change, or is it a culmination of how the season has gone so far?
Yeah, I think it's a culmination. I can't think of one specific time where, this year where I was like, dang, I really shouldn't have pushed the ball downfield in that situation. Like earlier in the year, had one against Minnesota that kind of carelessly coming up in the pocket on the run tried to put out there that I wouldn't have done if I had another opportunity. But yeah, that's the name of the game, and I've realized that throughout my whole career as an NFL player, and Callie's helped me realize that even more, of just how much more everything else is going to open up to you once you just start doing the boring things, and that's the mindset that I've had this year.
Well, what's the challenge of going into Washington this week and team fighting for a playoff spot?
Yeah, like you said, they're fighting. They've lost a few in a row, so we know that they're eager for a win. That place is going to be rocking. First time playing a little bit of cold weather, so that'll be nice. I think 40 degrees, something like that on Sunday. And they know that, and we know that they've got the capability to go out and beat some really good teams like they already have this year. So we got to make sure that we're ready. We're on our P's and Q's. Got a good rush, just good D overall with some good looks that we're going to have to make sure we're dialed in on. And we've already feel like we got a good start with the game plan that we put together so far. Good practice today. It was Clado. We came out here after the day off, and we got things rolling today.
With Ridley.
Sorry. Calvin's numbers, they huge updates since DeAndre. Is it, in your mind, is it as simple as more targets for a guy now that another guy is gone, or is there more to it than that?
Oh, for sure. Not having as many plays in the game plan for other receivers, or just like a guy like Hop, where you have to have those primary ones for him. And Calvin, we've definitely, I feel like, increased the percentage of plays for him. But it's going to be a week-by-week basis, kind of what we feel like is the best looks for us and what we need to do for us to win. But he's taken on the workload like we knew he was looking forward to, and he's been able to go out there and make some really good plays. I think him in his own right has stepped up a lot in the last handful of weeks and has played a whole lot better than he did in the beginning of the year, and he'll tell you that too. So it's exciting to see. He's making the plays that we need him to for us to win games, and you just got to keep working just like everybody else.
Is there anything behind the scenes that's happening differently? Because you look at the catch rate and everything, it's doubled, over the last 3 weeks between you and he.
Well, I'll talk about him. He works his tail off. Like he really was frustrated with kind of how the beginning of that season went, and Callie's message to us kind of this whole year was, do more, find ways to get better and to help our team win those games. And he's taken that to heart. I've seen the things he's added to his routine, the way he handles himself in the building. It's been impressive to see. He never held his head. That game in Detroit. I feel like when he first kind of broke out, that was really cool to see because it was those weeks leading up to it where I saw that being added into what he was doing, and it's cool to see it pay off for him. So he's deserved everything. He's just got to keep working. We're going to keep getting better. I know that.
And then one other thing, as a quarterback, right, when you take away a target dominant receiver, how much easier, or not easier, but like how much does it make it different for you able to do your job, where you're just looking for the open guy rather than a particular receiver?
Well, that's just playing the game. You can't always be looking for that one receiver. You try to put him in the position to be the primary or to be the route that we feel like is going to be the one that is going to be most open versus a certain look. Obviously, not every play we have it that way, but you try to scheme things up that way. But that's not to say you're going to drop back and throw it there every time. You got to react. You got to see the defense. When you have a guy like Calvin, it's easy to lock in on him like that, but you have to make sure that you're playing the position and putting the ball where it needs to be. Thank you.
That was Will Levis over at St. Thomas Sports Park. Had a lot of interesting things to say. I mean, they kind of dove into the absence of DeAndre Hopkins and how much that changed the offense and what they were able to do, finding plays for Calvin Ridley, because there were a lot of plays that were designed for DeAndre Hopkins. But what I want to kind of go back to something that Captain Tony talked about when he called in a few minutes ago was about footwork and what we have seen over these last few weeks. And one of the things that me and you have talked about essentially from the start of the year with Will Levis all the way up until he got injured was that he just had a problem going through reads. Whether he refused to go through the reads in the progression or whether he decided or whether he predetermined the read or he wasn't doing it fast enough. And there were a couple plays that I was looking at in the fourth quarter, and there were the one that was to Nick Vannett that got batted at the line. I think it was the last pass that he actually threw in the game. When you're looking at the all-22 from the end zone angle, it's facing Will Levis. So that angle is the one that you could see Will Levis looking and his head movement. And I went back and looked at a couple more plays, and he's starting to go through his progressions a little bit. Maybe not as quick as we want yet, but from where he was, he's going through his progressions better and not predetermining his reads as often as he did before he got injured. Because before he got injured, it was like every other play, you probably knew where Will Levis was going.
Well, I think, you have to go through a maturation process as a quarterback, especially in a new scheme, a new system. Sometimes I felt like, I'm going to use this example, the Zaire Alexander pick six.
Yeah.
I felt like he could have thrown any of those guys. It was a 3-step drop read. So he has to choose a guy before the snap, and he chose his guy, D-Hop. He could have chose anybody. So now when you take that guy out of the equation, you said, let the offense work for you, and then you know who your number one guy is. I think that's what they're saying without disrespecting D-Hop, which we all love, and we know he's a really good player, is that they had, too many Chiefs and not enough Indians. So that's what happened. Now everything falls in line as, making sure you go through your progression reads. Don't feel like you got to appease to Ridley and D-Hop, because D-Hop's going to be potentially a Hall of Fame type player. So, and they had a connection. They had a connection from last season. So you want to make sure you keep him involved, even though maybe you're not running him as the number one option. See, so now you're kind of settling in to where you need to be and letting yourself develop without trying to appease some of your guys. So I think that's part of it. I think the game is, slowing down a little bit to a certain extent where he can at least go through his second read and he's getting protection. There's times, though, when I feel like he has to know, all right, my first read isn't there. I'm getting pressure. I must know where that outlet is immediately, and don't even try to go through and try to just, even if you're throwing it at their feet, to avoid a sack. These are all, and I'm not asking much, but these are all veteran-type plays now. So we want to see it all come together, and that's where I think, the next level is just being the smartest guy on the field and being an extension of your coach from the sideline to the game, in game. So that's that takes time. So we get to see him live in action develop as a quarterback, and it's really, really special to see that. And I know some people don't have the patience for it. I think you've been touching on it all day about Callahan and how he works around it until you get there. And he's also growing as a play caller too. And to even have a coach admit that is really special. I don't know if the Titan fan base really understands when we're sitting there listening to the coach say all these things, this is exactly what goes on. And he's telling it all, whether it's against him or not, in a negative light. And I appreciate that. And I think players definitely do, because he's never going to throw them on the bus. He's going to respectfully say he didn't get it done. And then he's going to say, and I need to do better as well. We're not getting just coach talk. I believe him when he's talking. Sometimes he probably shouldn't even be telling us what he's telling us.
Yeah.
To be honest, he's giving us, really a seat at the table in the meeting rooms of what's being said. So I appreciate that. And just to see this offense finally starting to take strides and tick up, man, I just want to now see if they can do it again. I thought the Minnesota loss was a game that could give them confidence, because that's an elite team in this league. They are. And now to perform the way, a play here or two there, you might have had a shot of really beating them. And I think that led to the confidence. And now that you finally close one out and you won one, even though there was still sloppy play on both sides, both teams, you did enough to win. So then where does this take you on a team who's has a great player at quarterback, new ownership, new head coach, and they've lost a couple in a row? How do they respond? And then how do they respond when they see the Titans come into town, who is a bona fide, legit threat? And the people who are watching film, they know that, hey, man, we better play our A game or we will be in trouble.
Yep. We got more football to talk about before we head out. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop, Zach Lyons here, 104.5 The Zone. Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Stores. 615-737-1045. Last chance to get in on the phones, talk about Tennessee Volunteers or Tennessee Titans. And Jackson is not behind the glass anymore. We got Joseph, Bananas, as you like to call him, behind the glass. And Tennessee versus Vanderbilt, Joseph, where is your BVS at right now? Are you just fully confident, or are you kind of like, okay, I'm a little scared?
No, I think I'm confident because I do think that Vanderbilt is going to push Tennessee a little bit, especially in that first half. But I think because of how Vanderbilt's season has gone, the emotions that they've gone throughout the season, these last couple games, they've been pushed really hard. I just don't think right now they have the depth to kind of back up that bulldog mentality that Diego Papia says that he has, and that kind of the whole team encompasses whenever he's out there. So this is going to be a high emotion game for them. I mean, we've heard Clark Lee talk literally all week long about how important this game is and how big of a rivalry game that this game is, especially for him growing up here. But I think Tennessee's depth is just going to take over late in the season. You know, Diego Pavia's been dealing with injuries the last couple weeks. Tennessee's fairly healthy on their end just because of the sheer depth that they have, whereas Vanderbilt has just battled through every game. And all credit to them, because no one expected this kind of season from them. So credit to Clark Lee, credit to Pavia, credit to that entire team for what they've done. But no, I think Tennessee, while I do think it might be a fight in that first half, I think they'll be fine and get out of that game.
Where do you shift the blame or the reasoning for these first half kind of like slow starts?
I really don't. So last week I want to blame it on the fact that it was senior day. It was their first time playing at that time slot since Chattanooga, which was the first game of the season, because the only other day game they had was Alabama, and that was a 3:30 day game, which is essentially a night game, if you know, at 3:30. So I give it, at least for last week, I give it, because we saw in Georgia they got off to an early start, and these last couple weeks, ever since they broke the streak, Kentucky, ever since they broke the streak of 3 straight games of not scoring any points in the first half, they've started to put points up in the first half. Last week in that first quarter, I think it was just senior day threw off kind of their schedule a little bit. The fact that it's the first day game since week 1. So we'll see what happens. I know that West End has been a very weird place to play this year for opposing teams. If you look at Alabama and then look at what Texas, they struggled there, as well as some other teams. So I think if Tennessee can just find 10 to 14 points in the first half, I think their depth will take over in the second.
Mm-hmm. Blaine, so what do you think? I mean, this game's in Vanderbilt, obviously. It's down in West End. Where are you at? Are you going to go, Vandy, or are you going to go Tennessee?
Well, I really believe that Tennessee is going to have to start fast, because this is a game of contrasting styles. The Vanderbilt wants to ball control. We're not going to turn the ball over. And if Tennessee doesn't start off fast and make Vanderbilt chase them, because that's not what they want to do, they're going to be in for a fight. And so they better this slow start stuff, that better not happen. Because guess what you're doing to the old little brother?
Giving them confidence.
Yep, giving them confidence. And next thing you know, come third quarter, if you give them enough confidence, they're going to be in the game. Now, do they have enough Jimmy and Joes, to Banana's point, to hang around with them, especially on that D-line? They're trying to ball control. So I just think the personnel is going to be a little too much. But what I can say is this now is time for Nico to turn it up. For the money that they paying you, it's time to turn it up. Because guess what now? You're getting evaluated like you're a pro athlete. Yeah. It's time to rise. And if he doesn't rise, and I looked at his passing percentage versus SEC teams versus non-SEC teams. Non-SEC teams, 71% completion. It's the Chattanoogas and the UTEPs and everything. SEC, 61%, averaging 192 yards a game, only 5 TDs. So I think it's him. And they better not let the competitive attitude of Diego and that confidence rise, because the more and more that game goes on and they start believing they can win this game, the more you're living the life of a door. So I think start fast, show what you are athletically. They shouldn't be competing with you guys on any level. So get off quickly and let that die. Let it die. If not, that thing will keep rising. You will be in for a battle.
So I agree with you. So I look at it this way is that
I still think Tennessee will win. Tennessee 28-14.
I think it needs to be more than that, by the way. Not for any purpose other than you
31-14.
You got to show some more. Because I look at it this way. This is not to discredit anything that Vanderbilt has built or anything that they have put on the field, because, I mean, obviously they took it to Alabama. They've taken it to Texas to the limit. Like, they've been in some games and played great football. Tennessee is a better football team.
Yeah.
And I will say this.
More Jimmy and
I think
Jones,
it's
too.
a little bit more level, a higher. I think there's a higher separation than what people want to think between the talent that Tennessee has and the talent that Vanderbilt has. Sometimes talent don't matter, but you can't play with your food. And we have talked about that with Tennessee all year long. Don't play with your food. Get up to an early start. And if they get up to an early start tomorrow, like if you come out first drive and Tennessee scores on that first drive, I think you're gearing up for a blowout. Like, that's where I think. Now, if they come out and maybe they don't score in the first quarter and Vanderbilt's up by 7 or by 14, that may be a little too much for Tennessee if they cannot get stops and shorten drives. What you got, Joseph?
I need to see the same kind of drives you had versus Georgia to start that game. Nico was precise. He was accurate. He was lethal. They used Dylan Sampson in the pass game effectively. Very good balance. I think at one point in that first half, they had like 141 rush yards, 141 pass yards.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see, because unlike Georgia, I don't think if Vanderbilt gets in that hole to like what Blaine was saying, I don't think they have the talent. They might have the heart, but I don't think at this point in the season, it's the last week of the college football season. It's rivalry week. I don't think that they have the talent to drag themselves out of a hole.
Just think about this D-line block, Tennessee's D-line versus Vanderbilt's O-line. I mean, it's not a matchup you want.
I look at it this way. You don't want to see Arkansas, Tennessee out there. Like, I mean, that's the last thing you want, because that's what Vanderbilt's going to try and play. They're going to try and play that Arkansas game.
Vanderbilt's got some skill guys, the tight ends, the receivers, even their cornerbacks. They can match up.
Yeah. And I think this Tennessee team is well, offensively, they may still have their issues. I think they're a long way from what we saw from that Arkansas game. I think they have grown from what happened in the Bama game, what happened, Kentucky, Georgia. I think even despite that loss, I think they've grown from there. But yeah, I agree. Don't get in a hole early.
I'm predicting Tennessee to win right now. I think they'll win.
What's the score? I gave you my score. You have a score?
Oh, I don't know.
I'm raising the stakes out 31 to 14.
I got my guy Vandy Man in the chat, but 35-14 Tennessee is what I think.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think that's what it needs to be. What about you, Joseph? Last prediction.
I'm gonna go. Let's go 30 to 13. Tennessee.
I like it. Well, that will do it for us. Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the holidays. Enjoy the break. We'll see you guys on Sunday to break down the game. Blaine will be on the pregame show. I'll be on the postgame show. 3HL's up next. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone. And in the meantime.
And in between time. Peace.